David wasn't only confident in himself. David is confident in his God, more so than himself. He doesn't say anything about because of my might, because of who I am, because of what I can do. He says, you challenge the God of Israel. Because of that, today I'll be the one to cut your head off. I want to tell you a story about a legend of a man who was regarded as one of the most renowned rulers and warriors. But most importantly, a man said to be after God's own heart. We find the man the story is based on, not as a man, but as a young boy in the face of adversity. As of now, he is only a shepherd boy, but will grow to be a renowned warrior and king. This man has gone down in history as King David, who is referred to in the Bible as a man after God's own heart. He encounters victory, betrayal, loss, failure, and hardship. So he will start to tell a man named Samuel, who was secretly looking for a replacement for a current king because of the king's past actions. When Samuel arrived, he asked the man to gather his family because one of them was to be chosen. At first, Samuel thought the first brother was the one to be chosen. But God said this, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse called another one of his sons and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, the Lord has not chosen this one neither. And Jesse called another one of his sons, and the Lord didn't choose him either. So at this point, it's kind of wondering who's it gonna be. But then he called all 7 of his other sons, and neither of them were it. There was one who was working out in the fields. He said, I have one more son. So Jesse told him, call him. And when he walked in, the Bible describes him as glowing with health and youth. God spoke to Samuel and said, this is the one, anoint him. This is the first trait that I think that we can highlight. The boy's name was David. And the trait that I want to highlight is hardworkingness. David was not waiting for to be chosen. He wasn't the one that his father thought, because he called all 7 of his brothers before he called him. And when the youngest boy was chosen, it was a shock to everybody, I'm sure. So David was out working in the fields with his sheep. He was hardworking. And his hardworkingness benefits him not only now, but also in the future. So, as time went on, David was called to work in the king's courts for Saul, who was the current king that was going to be replaced, but he didn't know it. David was skilled. He was able to play the lyre very well, which allowed him to be inside the king's court. So he worked. In the day he worked in the king's court, and then some other days he still managed his father's sheep. But his people were at war, a war with a mighty enemy, vicious enemy, called the Philistines. And David's brothers, once again, were all out at war, but his father held him back. And so his father called David in and said, go out and take this food to your brothers and let me know how they are. So David went out. He went into the battlefield looking for his brothers to take them food. And so he did. And when he arrived, David found this. There was a man shouting. This man was not any regular man. He was 10 feet tall, and he carried weapons that were, I would imagine, as big as David. It said that his spear was three inches in width. The shaft of his spear was 3 inches in width. So you can imagine how big this man was. And so, for 40 days, he taunted the Israelites, saying this: "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." When David heard of all this, he wasn't going for it. Eventually, he went to Saul and said this: "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Now, keep in mind, David was a tiny man, right? David was small. He was still young. He was a young man. And Goliath was 10 feet tall. David looked at him with no fear in his heart. Maybe we're about to figure out why. Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "The servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it and struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its head, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine would be like one of them. Because he has defied the armies of the living God, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." So, we find a third important trait that David had, and it was confidence. But it was confidence and not conceitedness, cockiness. The reason why I call this confidence is because David had something to back this up. David had past experience from his hard work that allowed him to be skilled to build him for this moment. So he was able to look at a 10-foot tall giant, look back at his king and say, "Hey, I got this. Don't worry about it." So for men today to run down, we have to be hardworking. We have to build some skills through our hard work. And that hard work and those skills allow us to be confident at times when we have to face the lions, bears, and Goliaths of our own. As the story goes, Saul, not even knowing who David was, allows him to go, but first offered David a massive honor. So he offers him this massive honor. He offers him his armor. Now this is the armor of a king, right? It's got all the bells and whistles, the tassels, the bronze and gold I can imagine. And David puts it on. He walks around in it, struts it, and he says, "I cannot go in these." He said to Saul, "because I'm not used to them." So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in his shepherd's bag, and with sling in hand, he approached the Philistine. This is unprecedented. This is amazing. And this walks us into our 4th trait that I think is imperative for men to have in today's time, and even in biblical times, so you know in today's time. Self-awareness, the ability to be able to not be swayed by pride, by the opinions of others, what other people say, but the self-awareness and the ability to say, "This ain't for me, but I know what it is." And what David went back to was what he worked hard in, he built skill in, what he knew. And the ability for him to know himself, even at such a young age, is what allowed him to be able to change the world. And you'll see how, right? Meanwhile, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome. He despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David said to the Philistine, like little 4 foot, 5 foot David said to this 10-foot giant of a man, "You come against me with the sword and the spear and the javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of all the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, but the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As Goliath moved closer, readying his massive weapons for attack, David sprinted forward, grabbing a stone from his pouch and loading it into his sling, and just as Goliath was about to strike, David launched a stone from his sling and sunk it into Goliath's skull, and he fell, face down, to the ground. Having been watching this whole time, the army of Israel raged valiantly and surged. They overtook the Philistine army, leaving nothing in their way. David's faith, his hard work, his skill, and self-awareness up until this point was amazing. We find our fifth component, faith. David wasn't only confident in himself. David is confident in his God, more so than himself. He doesn't say anything about because of my might, because of who I am, because of what I can do. He says, "You challenge the God of Israel. Because of that, today I'll be the one to cut your head off." He looked at his challenge. He looked at his Goliath and said, "Because you challenge the God of Israel, you are nothing." For young men today, I argue that faith is an imperative. You have to have it. Especially if you're an athlete, you know in times that your body just fails you. Your mind will fail you. Your hands will fail you. Your muscles will fail you. But God will never fail. And through him, we are made impossible to conquer. So afterwards, King Saul called his commander and said, Bring me this boy. I need to know who he is." So David finds him. He looks at Saul in the face. And Saul says, "Who are you, young man?" And David says, "I'm the son of your servant, Jesse of Bethlehem." I want to leave you with this. Young men, old men, today's time, you need to have faith. You need to be hardworking. You need to be skilled. You need to have confidence. These things, these 5 things, can become a man of legend. These 5 things are what God looked past. For instead of appearance, he looked into David's heart. These are the 5 things he saw, and these are the 5 reasons he chose him. So, I say to you, young man, be strong, be courageous, seek faith, seek hard work, seek challenges, build skill. And through that skill, through that faith, through that challenge, through that hard work, you'll build confidence. And you'll be more than conquerors. Put God first. And you'll be impossible to conquer. So, that's all I got for y'all today. That's the 5 things that I feel like all men need in today's time. And there are also 5 more. Like this video, subscribe, and when the time comes, I'll post a second 5. Everybody be safe. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, peace.